Yo, what's up you guys? My name is Evan. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Today in this video, I'm going to be talking about ego. What is ego? What is ego death? These words are thrown around a lot in the psychedelic community, and the spiritual community. They're thrown around a lot. There's a lot of different definitions for ego. And so I wanted to give you guys my definition for ego, simplify it as much as possible for you so that it's easy to understand and easy to comprehend. So from my perspective, from my own experience, the simplest definition that I could give for what ego is that ego is essentially our sense of being a separate self. It's the sense of being an individual, and more specifically, it's our self-concept. We as humans have this ability to be self-aware. It's what differentiates us from the rest of the animal kingdom. Our pets and animals that we live with on this planet do not have a self-concept. They do not have the ability to think about themselves, to reflect on themselves. All they have is a limited amount of awareness. It's a non-conceptual awareness. Whereas we as humans, whether it's a blessing or a curse, have the ability to create a mental construct which we then identify as ourself. Our ego is essentially all the concepts that we identify with. Everything that we think about ourselves that we identify with then becomes a part of our self-identity, which becomes a mental construct, which then becomes our ego. And so, how does this relate to the psychedelic experience? How does this relate to ego death? Okay. Well, when we take a psychedelic and we enter into the psychedelic experience, what happens? Our sense of being an individual begins to break down. It begins to become deconstructed so that we feel our boundaries begin to dissolve. There's a boundary dissolution. There is a breakdown of egoic structures that may have been in place for a long time. You know, may have certain identities, certain concepts that we've been hanging on to for our entire life. And then when we take the psychedelic, we are introducing new perspectives and new concepts into these already pre-constructed notions. And so there can be a deep dissolution of our identities, things that we have accumulated over time. There is a sense of oneness with the rest of creation, and so there's a release of feeling like an individual. We start to have less of a sense of an individual identity. We can see, okay, I'm starting to feel like I'm more one with everything. I'm part of everything. I'm part of this whole thing that we call the universe. And these are phenomena that we begin to experience when we take a psychedelic. And these experiences are what are collectively known as ego death. And you know, the higher the dosage of the psychedelic, also depending on what type of psychedelic you're working with, the more intense the ego death can become. And so, in a way, we're not really dying, because after the experience is over, we can return to our sense of individuality, our sense of being like, oh, this is me, this is who I am as an individual. So it's not really so much of a physical death as we think, when somebody dies and they pass away, it's permanent. Ego death is kind of more of a figurative thing, where it's like a mental and a spiritual death, a dying unto that which we had previously identified with, and an opening to new information, new ways of being, new ways of thinking. sometimes a letting go of old identities and things that we had held on to for a long time. And so, in the spiritual community and in the psychedelic community, there's a lot of talk about killing the ego. You want to kill your ego and kill your sense of being an individual. And for me, from my perspective, I've had many psychedelic experiences. I've had many quote-unquote ego deaths. And really, that's not what it is that is the objective of the psychedelic experience and the spiritual experience. It's not to completely die to your individuality. You want to become healthy, a healthy, individuated person, an authentic person, somebody that is in alignment with their essence and their true nature. Authenticity as a philosophical concept comes from the deeper comprehension of spiritual essence. Because as a person, as an individuated person, and collectively as people, we all have an essence. We all have like a fragrance. Essence is not something that's easily comprehended because it's not something that is a mental construct. Essence is not a mental construct, it's a spiritual comprehension, a spiritual understanding. And from the comprehension of essence, thus is born the whole philosophical system of authenticity. But the point is that when we can go through ego death, when we can experience a dying unto all of the mental concepts and things that we had previously identified with, we can become more in alignment with our unconditioned essence. What do I mean by that? When we're born into this world, we were not conditioned in any kind of way. As a baby, you're pure, you're unconditioned, unadulterated, the world has not touched you. But as we grow up, we're conditioned, we're socialized, we're taught to be certain ways, think certain things, have certain beliefs, and there's all of this conditioning imposed on us externally by the world. And so when we go through ego death, when we go through psychedelic experience, there's this whole process of deconditioning and letting go of all of the things that were imposed upon us, seeing it for what it is, that it's just cultural conditioning. It's patterns, certain ways of thinking, certain ways of behaving that humanity has adopted over long periods of time. And these ways of being may not be congruent, they may not be in alignment with your essence. And if you can tune into your essence, become aware of it, become aware of who you are and how you are when the world is not telling you how to be, then you can become more authentic, you can become more in alignment with who you truly are, with who you are at your core. Essence is like a fragrance. When you go to smell like a flower or a piece of fruit, a unique flower has a unique fragrance. Every variation of fruit has a unique fragrance, a unique taste. Essence is like this. And if you can become more in tune with that, become more in tune with who you are at your core, you start to become also more aware of your conditioning. You can see, when am I operating from my essence? When am I being true to my essence and who I am at my core? And when am I operating from my conditioning? When am I operating from what society has taught me to be? And so this is essentially what ego is and what ego death is. Ego death is not so much of a literal thing. It's more of a figurative thing. It's more of a mental, psychological death and a deconstruction. But the ego definitely can die, but that's a whole other topic. You know, if you're pursuing enlightenment, and enlightenment is something that is your goal, then the ego may truly experience death, which is something that I have come close to with my high-dose 5-MeO-DMT experiences. So if you guys want to have some more information about high-dose 5-MeO-DMT, let me know in the comments. I'll make a video about that. I already have a video about my 5-MeO-DMT experiences, but I could make another video about it, because that first video was about my first experiences, and I've had several more experiences since then. So hope that you guys found some value in this video. Hope that it simplified the whole idea of ego and ego death for you. Consider subscribing to my YouTube channel. Give this video a thumbs up, because I'm going to be coming out with more content like this. So stay tuned, and I hope that you guys have a blessed rest of your day. Peace.